When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time alone, just imagining things. I remember sitting upside down uh, for hours, letting my mind wander into the abstract world. By high school, that internal exploration turned into a phase of drawing. I, put my pencil and paper together and start drawing random abstract shapes and lines and just letting the chaos out without thinking what I'm drawing. And afterward, I would sit in these deep states of thoughts, analyzing why I drew what I did, to understand my own internal state. In the digital design industry, there is a standard process, and every time a client reaches out, they have a specific purpose and goal, and I deeply respect that structure. But with our own site, I did not want to go in that, the same goal and purpose oriented direction. I wanted to explore my own internal feelings and come to new realizations through the work itself. Initially, we actually started designing the project under the old studio name, Visual Identity, but I had a long chat with Aman from Non-Zero, and he pointed out that the name sounded generic and it didn't just, represent what we were actually doing. So that was, I think, the final trigger that put me to the phase of thinking about a new name for the company as well. So, as I started abstractly thinking about a new name, my mind somehow wandered into my own astrological chart and I started doing some readings by my own self. And I got to know that I was born under the Punarvasu constellation, which also means the return of light, or it is also related to rebirth, actually. So that realization led directly to the name Lucera and its origin, which is again related to the bringer of light and the light. So yeah, and about 6 months ago, I had written this research paper on obsession engineering, and the initial spark for writing obsession engineering came from the first line of Nirvana Shatakam, like, Mano Buddhi Ahankara Chitta Inam. Uh, so, yeah, that deep spiritual reflection was already playing a quiet role internally, I think. And I was exploring in this new direction. So, I took all of that to the team and I told them we're starting this build without a clear finish line, just to see where the exploration takes us. While we were building, I spent a lot of time alone just thinking about contrast because, I was involved, or let's say, for the lack of better word, entangled in my thoughts of, looking at my own astrological charts while naming the company as well. So those thoughts, I think, were still lingering when I was designing. And I started looking back to my own astrological chart actually, and my ascendant is a Pisces. So that actually represents the sign of yin and yang. Also, in the Indian astrological context, the moon is the representative of your mind. And my moon happens to be in Gemini, which is again a double faced. So my mind has, or it's safe to say, my mind was wired to look at the world through opposing forces, I think, which is, light and dark, creation and the void. So I started looking at the current scenarios that are playing out in the world, as a aspect to design and what's going on in the design world. So, I put this current age of AI as a massive, formless void where we are losing point of view. And our goal for Lucera was to be the guiding light to bring a point of view in the creation, to actually build this, and make it viable for the team to produce, the creation. I had to translate these abstract thoughts into a more concrete narrative. So I built a story around it. I imagined the world as a dark, void, and heavens deciding to create a light to illuminate the place and sending that light down to the world in the void. So that metaphor became a creative brief, and that's why the hero section became a literal dawn of light, with the logo as a monolith or a portal sent from the heavens to bring that perception to life.
On a site like this, it's already so much happening visually. There is very good visual stuff and plenty of them. So silence is not just empty spaces. We have actually treated it as a tension. We have worked on two main tracks, main loop, heavily focused on background noises. We wanted to to deliver a mix between a moving, rather slow wind and something like we want to hear a kind of sonic fog. You know what I mean? And sometimes silence in this project is just a super deep sub bass you feel more than you hear. Um, it's a work on the whispers, sound whispers of wind on the background. Then it is a dialogue between this low, deep tension and a brighter one, more luminous opening with the voice and flute. That's why we encounter this project. So with Hardik, we exchange about the evolution of this music. You start from the darkness, the abyss, the darkness sound, and we evolve in some very positive and emotional journey. Uh, for us at Mooders, sound is I will say, is the glue of the whole user experience. When you have great images, great brief, great project, the sound must bring this good part and to have a very good deliverable project. So follow that movement of light washing away from the darkness. We used in our session sounds a lot of risers, swells, um, with granular pads and moves. And we reused some elements from the main loop. We composed the main loop, and after we reused some elements from the main loop to create navigation elements, transition, and such a for the other effects, and most importantly, the light transition. For us, it's a huge moment in the site navigation. The light transition that leads to the menu. So the voices we employed, the female vocal guides us through this transition. And we have also worked on a secondary loop, maybe more streamlined and softer to move to other pages.
There was a time when the web was built to hold information, but the future asks for something more. A feeling, a world, a memory.
Yes, it's on my opinion, it's 50-50, but it's it's not so particular. So the visuals for me show you the concept and the personality of the brand DNA, the brand website, but the sound make you also feel in your gut. So seeing that L, that Lucerrá logo break through the dark is beautiful, I think. And when you had that rumbling sub bass, the heavy impact and the female chorus suddenly open and had some brightness, that's when I think it's when it hits you when you click on the transition. It adds a 3D, a depth, and a organic feel. For us, it's a whole emotional journey. It's a very a long path and a positive one for Lucerrá future business, I think too, and a very strong communication. Yeah, on so many projects we are briefed sometime on the same level. You know, we are talking about the DNA of a brand or of a website, but the biggest challenge for us on this website is the visual of Lucerrá. The logo was already well established. You know, very strong personality and visual. Um, so it was definitely finding the right balance between the darkness and light. We are not used to work on this very often. So the site had to be like feel premium, sleek, elegant, but without losing that raw cinematic energy we wanted for the audio track. And the trap was making it too aggressive or annoying for the user. So taking that gritty, granular material and polishing it down to make it subtle and elegant. I took a lot of fine tuning in the studio, a good time of composition and sound designing. Um, we have avoided this music composition with deep rhythmic impacts, coupled with some SFX. I talked earlier about some fog sound or wind. We had to feel the airy sensation and some kind of low and mid-range synth pads. And Hardik told me about the clarity one. So in the studio, we have recorded some flutes, some violins, and high-pitched pads to add a very brightness stuff.
I was spending hours looking at classical art during the days when I was, doing the design. My whole YouTube algo was full of explanation about paintings and arts from the Renaissance period and the colonial India period. I was looking at a lot of paintings, and I think two paintings that I really liked at that time were The Death of Socrates and uh, the paintings by Raja Ravi Verma. And there was one more painting that was inspired by the art of Raja Ravi Verma. The painting was named Bharat Milap. So, thinking about how artists translated depth and emotion into their paintings, uh, and how they always wanted to show emotion in their paintings. Now we had the tools, so I want to take that liberty, but still have something that would, you know, ring a bell. So I was thinking about, their relationship with their paintbrushes. And while we are creating this world, I wanted to have a paintbrush like cursor animation, but something that would give a feeling of, you could paint actual reality out of void. So we spent a lot of time actually articulating it. We went through some ink shader animation examples, and we tried a lot of things. Actually, Kenichi spent a lot of time, coming up and articulating it. He had a lot of questions initially about, how we are going to make this, but I think once he exposed some GUI settings, I was able to play around, and even I was even I wasn't very sure if this was going to come out right, but I think it turned out pretty well. We also added some motion related, basically speed and velocity related. Um, effects in the cursor itself. So, the faster you move, the broader the strokes actually become, and the slower you move, it actually contracts like a real paintbrush. So, yeah.
I'm most proud of the customer interaction, and I did a lot of experimentation before implementing this effect. I tried to find out, the final one, what approach I can take, to create a cinematic effect. And let me introduce this effect. So when you move the castle on the homepage and you see the fruit distortion effect following the castle, and it's very reactive to the castle movement. So it's like you're touching the 3D scene with the organic feel. And when I started to create a small prototype, um, I thought, this effect is kind of analog and organic interaction. We often see it with the illustrative graphical website. So I, I kind of tried to understand, what kind of feeling uh, that we did want to create with this interaction. Mm, Maybe whether or not people feel real, it depends on whether or not people can sense uh, probably the like, passion, or emotion throughout an experience. So I really wanted to try bring there something natural, human touch uh, to our website. And of course, when uh, Hardik provided me, with this ink brush effect, I thought, yeah, that was great. That's something I really wanted to create. And so I could probably put more efforts into cracking this effect. So we did a lot of experiments. We I talked with Hardik many times in terms of this the customer interaction, and I wasn't so sure until I wasn't so sure how these effects are added, kind of different look and feel to our website until um, I implemented this interaction to the homepage. So yeah, after my implementation, Hardik defined the final effect, um, and actually Hardik recorded uh, the homepage while looking at the castle, and when I looked at the interaction, I feel like you're so cool. Yeah, same look and feel for keeping the organic and human touch. Yeah, so I think this implementation uh, was the one of the first that I really like, and even though it took a long journey to implement this, but yeah, I really love it. And when I look at the final version of production, I really love the combination of this organic interaction with the realistic 3D scene. I think this combination is very new. I feel like creating something new I've never seen before.
we had the void and we had the monolith of light, but still it was something that was missing, I felt. And I was now thinking about the initial narrative story that we had created. If, the heavens created this light, who was actually carrying the light into the void? We need a champion to carry the light to the void. So, sort of a character to be there. And, I was also thinking if this character could be there, it could become a representation of how we present our team as well. So that happened right in the middle of the sound design process. So I had also reached out to Eric during the process, and he was very supportive at the time. So, I remembered again, Punarvasu didn't just mean the return of light, it had to do something with rebirth. And I remember during those days, I was playing this game on my PS5, Final Fantasy XVI, and it had a beautiful phoenix in there. And, I was like, yeah, Phoenix is, a representation of rebirth, and it could be a really nice touch into the story and the narrative. So we went ahead with the Phoenix. Initially, the Phoenix was really closely inspired by the design of how the Phoenix was done in the game, the Final Fantasy XVI. It was very close to it. But, over the period of time, I think it was until the final phases of development and something kept clinging. And I was like, okay, we might have to change the Phoenix completely. And, that was a shock. But yeah, I came across this article as well. The Phoenix that was designed was, for the game. So it was not designed to be actually like a Phoenix or the feeling that we're trying to portray. It was more like a mix of a hawk or an eagle because the face was different and the way the phoenix was presented was different. And if you look at an actual phoenix, it's more like, really close to a peacock. So, yeah, we had to change the model completely. Yeah. So the Phoenix actually became the instrument, like a direct metaphor for the Lucera team as well. And, every Lucera team member is now represented by a Phoenix. If you look at the team page, there's a different color to each Phoenix, representing the personality of each team member. So, yeah, I think it was a lot of figuring out as I went. And, because I was trying to search my own feelings as well. Usually, when we do projects with clients, the roadmaps and everything are very structured and clean with a specific process for carrying out the art direction. But this one was wild. We decided to do it without an actual roadmap or process. And I wanted to explore my own internal feelings. So it turned out pretty well, I think.
While developing this website, we actually learned a lot of things. Because this project was actually pretty big for me. So me and Ameen was like going through a lot of learning on this big project because it took like more than 3 months, I guess. So while that we learned about different advanced 3D techniques, how we can efficiently render different 3D animations while making the SEO high as possible. Yeah, was I mean for like 2 days of vacation. Um, and how we got like some like sudden epiphany from somewhere that we had to like bring a phoenix and we want a particle animation, particle trail animation for the phoenix. So what I did is I I was like, okay, we can make it, but how? Suddenly, the things that I learned from the onboarding page came handy. Everything that you see, like, sees like uh, the same thing, but slightly modified from the previous version of onboarding page. Now, if you said the onboarding page is completely different, you have better animation. Before that, it was printing particles. So I did use like almost 80% of the logic from there only for actually creating the train.
So we weren't trying to spell out a literal story for the user to decode line by line. The narrative was simply a vehicle, a way to translate my internal philosophy into a concrete visual language so the studio, and everybody could actually build it. But bringing an abstract world like that to life meant like pushing the absolute physical limit of the browser or the web. So, yeah, I mean, you can have all the philosophical meaning like the ink brush curses or the chaotic, trails, but if the browser crashes, the vision kind of dies, right? So the friction between our abstract ambition and the hard technical limits of the screen was constant. I think during the whole project.
Yeah. So one small or detail that I worked on, and probably most people don't notice, is his transition. There was actually several technical works behind. I had to manage asset loading, shader, and a reveal roadmap. It was also animation timing. So everything should be ready at the right moment. And also we had route specific functions. So for home and other pages, we have a watermark function. And for project pages, we have a BTS part before landing on a project detail page. So yeah, while handling visual dimension, actually, I had to handle a lot of technical things, and the difficulty that I can't see a process of preloading assets, um, also warming up shader and with GL. So sometimes I implemented a kind of diagnostics monitor on the page visually, so that I can understand when the preloading was in, preloading end, and also when I can proceed to a next page. Yeah, I think that's small detail. Probably other people may not notice.
Yeah. So the Lucera experience is focusing on cinematic visuals, and what I love to do is create that cinematic experience with the visuals. So the main thing that contributes to the cinematic feel is post processing, the color grading, the bloom, so many things that add to the post processing pipeline that gives you that cinematic look. And I personally love creating post processing. I've spent a lot of time in building the post processing pipeline in the Lucera experience, also making sure it performs well across all devices. So post processing is a heavy task. So scanning them properly, adding proper resolution scales, then performance optimization is something that I've spent a lot of time into, and it is something that I'm very proud of. For every single experience that I make, performance is the biggest challenge. And everyone will face this challenge because this is what separates an experience. Even though it looks good, if it doesn't perform well, it's going to ruin the whole experience. So performance is something that you can't compromise on. What I try to do is optimize in every step that I'm building, even from the beginning of the project. If I try to shift it at towards the end of the project, then I'm gonna be struggling so much because you cannot identify what is causing the FPS drop with such a large code base. But if you are trying to optimize from every single step that you are taking since the beginning, it's going to make debugging a lot easier. You can identify what is causing the issue and you can optimize at that spot at that spot. So it's way more manageable. It's way more time efficient, I believe. And I've spent a lot of time optimizing, finding optimization techniques, watching game devlogs. So that is something that kept me up the most. So this is one main thing you have to take care when you're building a cinematic experience, because the resources we have for the browser is very limited. We don't have the same GPU capacity as we do in a game engine. So we had to be very careful of how we do the calculation, how we load the models, how much triangles it should have. It should be very optimized. So what we do is to try to minimize as many calculations as possible. Real time rendering is the last resort we would go for. And what we try to achieve is to create the same visual effect of the real time rendering. So, what I inspire from is game developers, because what they try to do is to maximize the optimization and just give you that beautiful look without even actually doing the real time rendering. So, knowing these techniques is very important to actually optimize things. So this knowledge is what helps you build a website, a 3D experience with good performance.
I thought the art direction was fantastic. The chance to merge art with programming was incredible. It really gave us creative freedom and let us build this whole world. It's an interesting mix. The ideal thing is to focus on the lighting, on the texture, to create the environment. That makes the environment more tangible and realistic. The biggest challenge is keeping technical control. By keeping technical control and mastering the tool, you can translate that into something visual. It was a challenge starting to working with websites because I need to translate all the 3D content animation into user experience. User experience means, simply put, concise and I believe fun as well. In animation, I work one way. To work with games, I work another way. Now, for our websites, I need to combine both ways of working into one. يسروا علي بس عاوز اتشعز على
So in the end, I think Lucera was more of an internal study for me as well about contrast. The yin and yang, the light and dark, the art and code. I think it started with pure imagination, just me sitting alone with abstract thoughts, letting my mind wander around and without a map or something. But we gave it a cinematic lens to shape the world, and then we brought it to life through code.